Hello, everyone. My name is Mama Bunny, and I'm so happy to see you here back at the burrow. Last time, I began reading the Moomins and the Great Flood, and I promised that I would finish it next time. And well, next time is finally here. So tonight, I'm going to be finishing reading the Moomins and the Great Flood. But first, we can't have a story unless we're all comfy cozy. So make sure you're wearing something comfy. And don't forget to bring your favorite stuffy. I think they're gonna want to hear the story too. Don't you? Well then, are we all comfy? Let's get started, shall we? Suddenly, they caught sight of something moving farther along the shore. It was a mass of small, pale creatures pushing out a sailboat. Moom and Momma looked at them for a long time, and then she called loudly, "Those are the Wanderers. Those are the Hattie-Fatteners," and began to run towards them as fast as she could. By the time Moomin Troll, the little creature, and Tulupa got there, Moom and Momma was standing in the midst of the Hattie-Fatteners, who only came up to her waist, talking and asking questions and waving her arms very excitedly. She asked over and over again if they really had not seen Moom and Papa, but the Hattie-Fatteners only looked at her for a moment with their round, colorless eyes, and then went on pulling the boat towards the water. "Oh dear," Moom and Momma exclaimed. "I was in such a hurry that I forgot they can't speak or hear anything." And she drew a handsome Moomin troll in the sand with a big question mark after him. But the Hattie-Fatteners did not bother about her at all. They had got the boat down into the sea and were busy hoisting the sails. It is also possible that they did not understand what she meant, for Hattie-Fatteners are very stupid. The black bank of cloud had now risen higher, and waves were beginning to move on the sea. "There's nothing for it. We shall have to go with them," said Moom and Momma at last. "The shore looks gloomy and deserted, and I don't feel like meeting another antlion. Jump into the boat, children." "Well, it's not on my head," mumbled the little creature, but he climbed on board after the others all the same. The boat steered out to sea with a Hattie-Fattener at the helm. The sky grew darker and darker. All around the tops of the waves had white foams on them, and far away thunder was rumbling. As it fluttered in the gale, Tulipa's hair glowed with a very faint light. "Now I'm frightened again," said the little creature. "I'm almost beginning to wish I hadn't come with you at all." "Pooh," said Moomin Troll, but then he lost the desire to say any more and crept down beside his mother. Now and then came a wave that was bigger than all the others and splashed in over the bow. The boat sailed on with taut sails at a furious speed. Sometimes they saw a mermaid dance by on the crest of the waves. Sometimes they glimpsed a whole flock of little sea trolls. The thunder rumbled louder, and the lightning ran crisscross over the sky. "Now I feel seasick too," said the little creature, and then he was sick while Moomin Mamma held his head. The sun had set long ago, but in the gleam of the lightning they noticed the sea troll that kept trying to keep abreast of the boat. "Hello there," cried Moomin Troll through the storm to show that he was not afraid.
"Hello, hello,"
said the sea troll.
"You look as though you might be a relation."
"That would be nice," cried Moomin Troll politely. But he thought it was probably a very distant relation, because Moomin Trolls are a much finer species than sea trolls. "Jump into the boat," Tulipa called to the sea troll. "Otherwise, you'll be left behind." The sea troll took a leap over the gunwale of the boat and shook the water off himself like a dog.
"Grand weather,"
he said.
"Where are you bound for?"
"Anywhere, as long as we can reach land,"
groaned the little creature, who was quite green in the face with seasickness.
"In that case, I had better take the helm for a bit,"
said the sea troll.
"If you keep on this course, you'll go straight out to sea."
And then he took over for the Hattie Fatteners, who had sat at the helm, and made the boat alter course. It was strange how much easier it was now that they had the sea troll with them. The boat danced along, and sometimes it made long leaps over the peaks of the waves. The little creature began to look more cheerful, and Moomin Troll shrieked with delight. Only the Hattie Fatteners sat, staring indifferently at the horizon. They did not care about anything except traveling on from one strange place to the next.
"I know a fine harbor,"
said the sea troll.
"but the entrance is so narrow that only superior seamen like myself can manage it."
He laughed loudly and made the boat make a mighty leap over the waves. Then they saw land rising out of the sea under the Fort Lightning. Moomin Mamma thought it was a very wild and creepy land. "Is there anything to eat there?" she asked.
"There's anything you'd like,"
said the sea troll.
"Hold on, for we're going to sail right into the harbor now."
At that same moment, the boat rushed into a black ravine, where the storm howled between the enormously high faces of rock. The sea foamed white against the cliffs, and it looked as though the boat was plunging straight towards them. But it flew light as a bird into a large harbor, where the transparent water was calm and green as a lagoon. "Thank goodness," said Moomin Mamma, for she had not really trusted the sea troll. "It does look nice here,"
"It depends on your taste."
said the sea troll.
"I suppose I prefer it when a storm is raging. I'd best be off before the waves get smaller."
And then he somersaulted down into the sea and was gone. When the Hattie Fatteners saw an unknown land before them, they livened up. Some began to furl the slack sails, and others put out the oars and rowed eagerly towards the flowering green shore. The boat put in at a meadow that was full of wild flowers, and Moomin Troll jumped ashore with the mooring rope. "Now bow and thank the Hattie Fatteners for the voyage," said Moomin Mamma. And Moomin Troll made a deep bow, and the little creature wagged his tail gratefully. "Thank you very much," said Moomin Mamma and Talupa. and they curtsied down to the ground. But when they all looked up again, the Hatney Fatteners had gone on their way,
I expect they made themselves invisible.
said the little creature.
Funny folk.
Then all four of them went in among the flowers. The sun was rising now, and the dew was glittering and gleaming. "This is where I'd like to live," said Tulipa. "These flowers are even more beautiful than my old tulip. Besides, my hair never really matched it properly."
Look, a house made of real gold,
shouted the little creature suddenly, pointing. In the middle of the meadow stood a tower with the sun reflecting itself in its long row of windows. The top story was made entirely of glass, and the sunlight gleamed in it like burning red gold. "I wonder who lives there," said Moomin Mamma. "Perhaps it's too early to wake them."
But I'm so horribly hungry,
said Moomin Troll.
Me too,
said the little creature in Talupa. And then they all looked at Moomin Mamma. "Well, all right then," she said. And then she went up to the tower and knocked on the door. After a little while, a hatch in the door opened, and a boy with completely red hair looked out.
Are you shipwrecked?
He asked. "Almost. But we're most definitely hungry." Then the boy opened the door wide and invited them to come in. And when he caught sight of Tulupa, he made a deep bow, for he had never seen such beautiful blue hair before. And Tulipa curtsied just as deeply, for she thought his red hair was absolutely lovely. Then they all followed him up the spiral staircase, all the way to the top story, made of glass, where they could see out over the sea in all directions. In the midst of the tower room was a table, on which there was an enormous bowl of steaming sea pudding. "Is that really for us?" "Of course," said the boy.
I keep a lookout here when there's a storm out at sea, and all who escape into my harbor are invited for sea pudding. That's how it's always been."
Then they sat round the table, and after a very short while, the whole basin was empty. The little creature, who sometimes did not have very good manners, took the bowl with him under the table and licked it completely clean. "Thank you so awfully much," said Moomin Mamma. "You must have invited quite a lot of people up here for sea pudding, I should think."
Oh yes,
said the boy.
People from every corner of the world, snuffkins, sea ghosts, little creeps and big folk, snorks and hemulins, and the odd anglerfish too.
"I suppose you haven't seen any Moomins by any chance?" asked Moomin Mamma. And she was so excited that her voice quivered.
"Yes, one,"
said the boy.
"That was after the cyclone last Monday." "That couldn't have been Moomin Papa, could it?"
cried Moomin Troll.
"Did he keep putting his tail in his pocket?"
"Yes, he did actually," said the boy.
"I remember it quite particularly because it looked so funny."
Then Moomin Troll and his mother were so happy that they fell into each other's arms, and the little creature jumped up and down and cried,
Hurrah!
"Where did he go?" asked Moomin Mamma. "Did he say anything particular? Where is he? How was he?"
"Fine," said the boy. "He took the road to the south."
"Then we must go after him at once," said Moomin Mamma. "Perhaps we'll catch up with him. Hurry up, children. Where's my handbag?" And then she rushed down the spiral staircase so fast that they could scarcely follow her.
"Wait!"
cried the boy.
"Wait a bit!"
He caught up with them in the doorway. "You must forgive us for not saying goodbye properly," said Moomin Mamma, who was hopping up and down with impatience. "But you see—"
"It's not that,"
said the boy, now as red in the face as his hair.
"I just thought, whether by any chance—"
"Well, out with it," said Moomin Mamma.
"Talupa,"
said the boy.
"Fair Talupa, I suppose you wouldn't like to stay with me, would you?"
"Gladly," replied Tulipa at once, looking happy. "All the time I was sitting up there, I was thinking how well my hair might shine for seafarers in your glass tower. And I'm very good at making sea pudding." But then she became a little anxious and looked at Moomin Mamma. "Of course, I would terribly like to help you look as well," she said. "Oh, I'm sure we'll manage," said Moomin Mamma. "We'll send you both a letter and tell you what happens." Then they all hugged one another goodbye, and Moomin Troll went on his way southwards with his mother and the little creature. All day they walked through the flowering landscape, which Moomin Troll would have liked to explore on his own. But his mother was in a hurry and would not let him stop.
Have you ever seen such funny trees
Asked the little creature.
with such terribly long trunks and then a little tuft at the top? I think they look silly.
"It's you who's silly," said Moomin Mamma, who was on edge. "Actually, they're palm trees, and they always look like that."
Have it your way,"
said the little creature, who was offended. It had become very hot late in the afternoon. Everywhere the plants drooped and the sun shone down with a creepy red light. Even though Moomins are very fond of warmth, they felt quite limp and would have liked to rest under one of the large cactuses that grew everywhere. But Moomin Mamma could not rest until they found some trace of Moomin Troll's papa. And they continued on their way straight southwards, even though it was already beginning to get dark. Suddenly, the little creature stopped and listened.
"What's that pattering around us?"
He asked, and now they could hear a whispering and a rustling among the leaves. "It's only the rain," said Moomin Mamma. "Now we must crawl in under the cactus anyways." All night it rained, and in the morning it was simply pouring down in bucketfuls. When they looked out, everything was gray and melancholy. "It's no good. We must go on," said Moomin Mamma. "But here's something for you that I've been saving until it was really needed." And she produced a large bar of chocolate from her handbag. She had taken it with her from the odd gentleman's wonderful garden. She split it in two and gave them each a piece. Aren't you going to have some? Asked Moomin Troll. No, said his mother. I don't like chocolate. So they walked on in the pouring rain all that day, and all the next day too. All they found to eat were a few sopping wet yams and one or two figs. On the third day it rained harder than ever, and each little rivulet had become a foaming torrent. It became more and more difficult to make any progress. The water rose ceaselessly, and at last they had to climb up onto a small rock so as not to be snatched away by the current. There they sat, watching the rushing eddies come closer and closer to them, and feeling that they were catching cold. Floating around everywhere were furniture and houses and big trees that the flood had carried with it.
I think I want to go home,
Said the little creature, but no one listened to him. The others had caught sight of something strange that was dancing and whirling towards them in the water. They've been shipwrecked, cried Moomin Troll, who had sharp eyes. A whole family. Momma, we must rescue them. The thing that was lurching towards them was an upholstered armchair. Sometimes it got caught in the tree tops that stuck up out of the water, but was pulled free by the current and went drifting on. In the chair sat a wet cat with 5 equally wet kittens around her. Poor mother, cried Moomin Mamma, and she jumped into the water all the way up to her waist. Hold on to me, and I'll try to catch them with my tail. Moomin Troll took a steady hold of his mother, and the little creature was so excited that it did not manage to do anything at all. Now the armchair was whirling by. Like lightning, Moomin Mamma tied her tail in a half hitch around one of the armrests, and then she pulled. Heave ho, she cried. Heave ho, cried Moomin Troll.
Ho, ho.
Squeaked the little creature. Slowly, the chair swung in towards the rock, and then a helpful wave came and took it up onto the land. The cat picked up her kittens by the scruff of their necks, one by one, and put them in a row to dry. Thank you for your kind help, she said. This is the worst thing that has ever happened to me. It was a catastrophe. And then she began to lick her children.
I think the weather's clearing up,
Said the little creature, who wanted to make them think about something else. He was embarrassed because he had not managed to help in the rescue. And it was true, the clouds were moving apart, and a shaft of sunlight flew straight down, and then another, and all of a sudden the sun was shining over the enormous, steaming surface of the water. Hurrah! Cried Moomin Troll. Now everything will be all right. You'll see. A small breeze arose and chased the clouds away, and shook the treetops that were heavy with rain. The agitated water calmed down. Somewhere, a bird began to chirp, and the cat purred in the sunshine. Now we can go on, said Moomin Mamma firmly. Don't have time to wait until the water sinks away. Get up into the armchair, children, and then I'll push it out into the lake. I shall stay here, said the cat and yawned. One should never make a needless fuss. When the ground is dry, I'll walk home again." And her 5 kittens, who had recovered in the sunshine, sat up and yawned too. Then Moomin Mamma pushed the armchair out from the shore.
"Go carefully,"
cried the little creature. He was sitting on the backrest and looked around, for it had occurred to him that they might find something valuable floating in the water after the flood. For example, a casket full of jewels. Why not? He kept a sharp watch, and when he suddenly saw something gleaming in the water, he shouted loudly with excitement.
"Go that way.
He cried.
There's something shining over there."
"We haven't got time to fish up everything that's floating around," said Moomin Mamma. But she paddled that way all the same, because she was a kind mamma.
"It's just an old bottle,"
said the little creature, disappointed, when he had hauled it up with his tail. "And no nice sweet drink in it either," said Moomin Troll. "But don't you see," said his mother seriously, "it's something very interesting. It's a message in a bottle. There's a letter inside." And then she took a corkscrew out of her handbag and uncorked the bottle. With trembling hands, she spread out the letter on her knee and read aloud. "Dear Finder, please do what you can to rescue me. My beautiful house has been swept away by the flood, and now I'm sitting lonely, hungry, and cold in a tree, while the water rises higher and higher. Sincerely, an unhappy Moomin." "Lonely and hungry and cold," said Moomin Mamma, and she cried, "Oh, my poor dear Moomin Troll, your father has probably drowned long ago." "Don't cry," said Moomin Troll. "Perhaps he's sitting in a tree somewhere very close. After all, the water's going down as fast as can be." And so it was. Here and there, hillocks and fences and roofs were already sticking up above the surface of the water, and now the birds were singing at the top of their voices. The armchair bobbed slowly along towards a hill where a lot of people were running about, pulling their belongings out of the water.
"Why, there's my armchair,"
cried a big Hemulin who was gathering his dining room furniture together and onto the shore.
"What do you think you're doing, sailing around in my armchair?"
"And a rotten boat it made, too," said Moomin Mamma crossly, and she stepped ashore. "I wouldn't have it for anything in the world."
"Don't annoy him,"
whispered the little creature.
"He may bite."
"Rubbish," said Moomin Mamma. "Come along now, children." And they walked along the shore, while the Hemulin examined the wet stuffing in his chair. "Look," said Moomin Troll, pointing to a marabou stork who was walking along scolding to himself. "I wonder what he's lost. He looks even angrier than the Hemulin."
"Little impudent child,"
said the marabou stork, for he had good ears.
"If you were nearly 100 years old and had lost your spectacles, you wouldn't look exactly pleased either."
And then he turned his back to them and continued his search. "Come along now," said Moomin Mamma. "We must look for your father." She took Moomin Troll and the little creature by the hand and hurried on. After a while, they saw something gleaming in the grass where the water had subsided.
I bet it's a diamond,
Cried the little creature. But when he looked more closely, they saw that it was only a pair of spectacles. They're the Marbo Stokes, don't you think, Mother? Asked Moomin Troll. Must be, she said. You better run back and give them to him. But hurry up, for your poor father is sitting somewhere hungry and wet and all alone. Moomin Troll ran as fast as he could on his short legs, until in the distance he saw the stork poking about in the water. Hello there, hello, he cried. Here are your spectacles, Uncle Stork. Well, fancy that, said the stork, very pleased. Perhaps you are not such an impossible little child after all. And then he put on his spectacles and turned his head this way and that. I really must go at once, said Moomin Troll. You see, we're searching too. Well, well, I see, said the stork in a friendly voice. What for? My father, said Moomin Troll. He's up in a tree somewhere. And the stork thought for a long time. And then he said firmly, You will never manage it alone, but I will help you because you found my spectacles. And then he picked up Moomin Troll in his beak very carefully and put him on his back, flapped his wings a few times, and sailed away over the shore. Moomin Troll had never flown before, and he thought it was tremendous fun and a little scary. He was also quite proud when the stork landed beside his mother and the little creature. I am at your service in the matter of searches, madam, said the stork, bowing to Moomin Momma. If the family will climb on aboard, we shall effect our departure at once. And then he lifted first her and then the little creature, who squeaked with excitement.
Hold on, he said. We're going to fly out over the water now?
I think this is the most wonderful thing we've been through so far, said Moomin Momma. Why, flying is not nearly as frightening as I thought. Now keep a good lookout for Moomin Papa in all directions. And the stork flew in wide circles and came in low over each treetop. And they saw a lot of people sitting amidst the branches, but none of them was who they were looking for. I shall have to rescue those creeps over there later on, said the stork, who had become really inspired by the rescue expedition. He flew to and fro above the water for a long time, and the sun began to set, and then everything seemed quite hopeless. Suddenly, Moomin Momma cried, There he is! And began to wave her arms so wildly that she nearly fell off. Papa, shouted Moomin Troll, and the little creature cried out too, out of pure sympathy. There, on one of the highest branches of an enormous tree, sat a wet, sad Moomin Papa, staring out over the water. Beside him he had tied a distress flag. He was so amazed and delighted when the stork landed in the tree, and the whole of his family climbed down onto the branches, that he could not say a word. Now we shall never be separated again, sniffed Moomin Momma, and took him in her arms. How are you?
Have you caught a cold? Where have you been all this time? Was the house you built a very fine one?
Did you think of us often?
It was a very fine house indeed,
said Moomin Papa.
my dear little boy. You have grown.
Well, well, said the stork, who was beginning to feel touched.
I think I had better put you down on dry land and try to rescue a few more before the sun goes down. It's very pleasant rescuing people.
And then he took them back to the shore, while they all talked at the same time about every dreadful thing they had been through. All along the shore, people had lit fires at which they were warming themselves and cooking food, for most had lost their homes. The stork put down Moomin Troll, his father and mother, and the little creature at one of the bonfires. And with a hasty farewell, he flew out over the water again. Good evening, said the two angler fish who had lit the fire. Do sit down. The soup will be ready in a moment.
Thank you very much,
said Moomin Papa.
You have no idea what a fine house I had before the flood. Built it all by myself. But if I get a new one, you will be welcome any time.
How big was it?
asked the little creature.
3 rooms,
said Moomin Papa.
1 sky blue, 1 sunshine yellow, and 1 spotted. And a guest room in the attic for you, little creature.
Did you really mean for us to live there too? asked Moomin Mama, very pleased.
Of course,
he said.
I looked for you always, everywhere. I could never forget our dear old stove.
Then they sat and told one another about their experiences and ate soup until the moon had risen and the fires began to go out along the shore. Then they borrowed a blanket from the anglerfish and curled up close next to one another and fell asleep. By morning, the water had gone down a good way, and they all went out into the sunshine in a very good mood. The little creature danced in front of them all and tied a bow in his tail because he was so happy. All the day they walked, and wherever they went, it was beautiful. For after the rain, the most wonderful flowers had come out everywhere, and the trees had both flowers and fruit. They only needed to shake a tree slightly, and the fruit fell down around them. At last, they came to a small valley that was more beautiful than any they had ever seen that day. And there, in the midst of the meadow, stood a house that almost looked like a tall stove, very elegant and painted blue.
Why, that's my house,
cried Moomin Papa, quite beside himself with joy.
It must have floated here, and here it is.
Hurrah!
shouted the little creature, and they all rushed down into the valley to admire the house. The little creature even climbed up on the roof, and there he shouted even louder, for up on the chimney hung a necklace of large, real pearls that had lodged there during the flood.
Now we are rich.
He cried.
We can buy a car and even a bigger house.
No, said Moomin Mama. This house is the most beautiful one we could ever have. And then she took Moomin Troll by the hand and went into the sky blue room. And there, in the valley, they spent the whole of their lives, apart from a few times when they left it and traveled for a change. But those are all stories for another time. Oh, I'm so happy that the family was reunited and that they found the beautiful home that Moom and Papa made for them. Well, little ones, I hope you enjoyed this story, but it's getting late and we should go to sleep. So, get all snuggled up underneath your blanket. Hold your favorite stuffy tight, 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 so they know they are loved. Oh, and dream some wonderful dreams. And while you're having those wonderful dreams, I'll find us a story for next time. How does that sound? Well then, always remember, Mama loves you very, very much. Good night.